All right, so last week we talked about life in the middle. We talked about really the understanding of the centurion. We talked about the understanding that there's a time in life to lead, there's a time in life to follow. There's a need in your life to be under authority. The question I kind of asked at the end was, whose authority are you under? And for a lot of us, I think our initial response, we want to jump at a response, but the truth is, if you're not, this is going to sound like horribly, parental, but if you're not doing what you're told to do, then you're really not under their authority. That's just the reality. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm under the authority of Jesus, not under the authority of any man. Well, then are you doing exactly everything Jesus has told you to do? And all of us in this room would be like, no, we know people who are, we're hypocritical Christians. We're not, of course, because we're awesome. But, we know hypocritical Christians. No, of course not. There are lots of things that Jesus asks us to do that we're not doing. So when we sit there and say, well, I'm under, this person's authority, or I'm under the authority of Jesus, the question becomes, are you really doing what you're instructed to do? Are you being led? Are you responding well? So those are the things we talked about last week to kind of set up the purpose series and dealing with life and purpose. So this week we're going to talk about living on purpose. We're going to talk about what it means to really live with a strategy in mind, to live with a goal, an objective. How many of us wake up every day and think about our goals and objectives? Right? So it's okay. I didn't assume that people would be like, well, who does that? Apparently only 4 of you. But, right? What's the primary goal most of us have when we wake up in the morning? Coffee. The coffee pot, right? Right? A lot of us are very depressed in the morning. A lot of us are frustrated. A lot of us are angry. A lot of us, first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is to realize what we have to do that day. But the truth is, as Christians, making your moments matter. Living on purpose, embracing opportunity, and not only that, but preparing yourself for it. That's what living on purpose is. That's what living with objectives, living with goals. I want things to take place. So we're going to talk about that this morning. So purpose is as a noun. Now we're going to talk about it in 2 facets this morning. Is defined as the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Now, there is not anyone in the world, I don't care if you're an atheist, I don't care if you're a Buddhist, I don't care if you're a therapist. It doesn't matter. You basically want to understand your reason for being. Now, I'm not saying that your reason necessarily has to be celestial. It doesn't have to be understood in terms of the spiritual. But every human being desires to understand the reason that they're here, the purpose that they can fulfill. Every person does. And if you say you don't, then you're lying. Everyone wants to know. Mark Twain is famous for saying, right, the 2 most important days in a person's life are the day they're born and the day they realize why. The truth is we all want to understand why. What our purpose is, what the point is, what is the reason I was created. As Christians, we should be able to answer that question pretty easily, shouldn't we? But if you walk up to a lot of Christians and say, why were you created? It's a hard answer. Because we'll sit there and say, no. Right? A lot of us, we don't really have any idea, so we struggle with it. So, dealing with individual purpose is ask yourself the question, what is yours? What is your purpose? What is your reason for being? What is the whole point of why you were created? Why did Jesus create you? Why? Why are you God's handiwork? To simply fulfill your reproductive mandate in Genesis? To populate the earth? Is that what it is? Besides that, you're irrelevant? It's an interesting question. We should be able to answer this, but a lot of us can't. And really, then, what is your heavenly purpose? Because really, you can look at it on a couple of levels. What is your reason for being here, and what is your reason for ultimately being created? So, purpose also has a secondary look. It's also understood as a verb, which means to have as one's intention or objective. Now, if I say I'm living on purpose, it means I'm living with intentionality. I'm living with objectives and goals in mind. As Christians, we should live that way. We talked about growth for about a month and a half. Growth will not happen by accident. A lot of us really wish it would. You really wish that book on the table would just leap into your brain. I was watching the end of The Matrix yesterday, and I remember the scene where he's like, "Can you fly that helicopter?" And she's like, "Not yet." Okay, let's go. All right, don't we wish that was the way life was? And just have some guy at a computer, in a ship, back in the sewer, loading things in your head. Maybe I carried the analogy too far, but the idea that most of us wish that was true, but that's not how it works. If you want to learn, there's really only a few ways to do so. Really, there's the hard way and the long way. But we have to make life, to have as one's intention. So my purpose is, I have purposed for something to happen, which means I had an objective, I had an intention to make sure that the follow-through came. That's called missional purpose. So for what have you purposed for God? So what in your life, what do you have that you would consider are your heavenly objectives? What do you have that are considered your heavenly goals? For what did he purpose you? So why did he design you? Did he have something specific in mind? Is a good question to ask yourself. A lot of us, we don't know. Because there's a lot of confusion about how purpose can be carried out in terms of how our lives, as how we live our lives before God. And what have you done to make it happen? So the reality is what have you moved forward in using whatever God has created you for? So this week we're actually going to take a look at one of the greatest Bible stories in ever, and it's found in Judges 3. And you've probably heard it preached on a few times. We're going to take kind of a different look at it this morning. And it says, "And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. Then he gathered to himself the people of Ammon and Amalek, and went and defeated Israel, and took the possession of the city of palms. So the children of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. Now, this is a pretty common problem that we find in the Old Testament, right? The Bible starts a lot of chapters with, "And Israel again did evil in the eyes of God." In other words, Israel started screwing up again. And then God brought in somebody to basically teach them a lesson. Now, I want you to think about the fact that Eglon basically is in charge for 18 years. 18 long years they've been suffering. Now, there's a few points of reference here that are kind of interesting. We don't know when they started to cry out to God. It doesn't say that they cried out to God, Ehud appeared. It just says that they began to cry out. Eglon's been in charge for a long time. They could have started crying out on day one for all we know. And God may have made them wait for 18 years. So that's a really important part of the story. And the other part is that God's redemption isn't always for people we think it should apply to. Israel consistently screws up. Over and over and over and over and over and over. And God keeps going, okay, here's some redemption, here's some redemption, here's some redemption. And I think for a lot of us, we kind of have a certain limit that we put on people. We just make a decision, you've had enough. Time to cut you off, get out. But God's redemption isn't always for the people that you think deserve it, and certainly not the people that we think as a corporate body deserve it. But when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for them, Ehud the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. It's very important. All the southpaws in the room pretty stoked, right? That's right. Very important. By him, the children of Israel sent tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now, we're going to make a certain point today to not read into the story what isn't there. Now, Ehud made himself a dagger. It was double-edged and a cubit in length, and fastened it under his clothes onto his right thigh. So now it says, basically, he gets himself set up. Okay, so it's important that we understand the southpaws weren't very common, right? Why?
Handshaking?
Handshaking? Absolutely. What'd you use your left hand for? Right. So think about that next time you shake somebody's hand this morning. All right. Especially if you got a lefty who reaches out with that left hand. Now, there are a lot of reasons too, right? Everything was individually created. So anything that was mass-produced for warfare, weaponry, and all that stuff was built for righties. So if you were a lefty, you were forced to learn to be a righty, as the Lord intended. All right, because lefties are just messed up and think funny. Southpaws were just not very common. All right, so we had a situation basically where southpaws are not very common. But there's a few initial thoughts that basically are important. Things we don't see. God's calling in His laid out plan. Now, this is an important thing, and I don't want you to misunderstand what my point here. I don't want you to think that somehow I felt like we're all winging it in this situation. But one of the things that you just don't see in this story is what? God's saying, okay, come on over, Ehud, let's have a E-huddle. Let's have a huddle, and let's talk about, the plan. We don't see any of that, do we? What does it say? God raised up a left-handed guy. So God designed Ehud, but we don't see anything about him saying, now here's the plan. Let's go through each and every step. Basically, He raises him up. So it's important that we understand that we can't read into it what isn't there. We have to be very careful with that, especially in the Old Testament. God designed Ehud perfectly, even though by societal standards, he was not. He was messed up. He preferred his left hand. That's not cool. But God designed him perfectly for what He had installed him to do. Now, we don't have conversations and plans. We don't have back and forth between the two of them. We don't have any of that recording. All we have is the simple phrase, God raised up a deliverer. And the Bible is careful to record the fact that he was left-handed. Ehud, you used his uniqueness to hatch a plan. And I think it's important that we understand a couple of factors in this story that are not made obvious. Is that it doesn't say that God gave Ehud the plan. It just says He raised him up. It says that Ehud was basically brought to this opportunity, and Ehud made the blade and prepared its hiding place. Did he not? It wasn't an Excalibur type deal, right? Ehud did not walk out and go, oh, the dagger of the Lord is here for me. I will put it on my right thigh. No, basically he sets it up. So God's plan may be just in the design of who you are. When we talk about purpose and purposing to do something, truth is, a lot of times we look toward other methodologies. We look toward this idea that somehow there has to be, this divine laid out plan. Somehow I need a blueprint for success and purpose. I need God to basically part the clouds and go, here is your purpose. Here is your reason for being. I mean, granted, that would be sweet and really cool. But the truth is, the scope of the plan He has for your life may solely be in your design. And so for a lot of us, we sit there and say, well, yeah, but I don't really have, a lot to offer. Well, what do we know about Ehud up to this point? He was brave, right? Had to be brave. And he was lefty. Okay, so far pretty... Yeah, Tony, you're left-handed? And I consider you a reasonably brave guy, as far as I can tell. Right? So, we have our own Ehud, right? Tony is our redeemer. Right? He is going to deliver us from the clutches of whatever. Whoever it is that oppresses us. That's it, but right? I mean, those are the things. And so we have bravery and at this point, and the plan is pretty simple. And one of the things that's really important to understand is, as we read forward, is we don't know a whole lot of what Israel knew of the plan either. And so we brought the tribute to Eglon. The Bible says that he was selected to bring a tribute. That's all it says. It doesn't say that Ehud was selected to be the assassin. It just says he was selected to bring tribute. So beyond that, we don't know how much anybody else even knew, right? Yes? Everybody still with the story? Yes. Good, because it gets really graphic. Now, Eglon was very fat. Also, and that's important because of the awesomeness of the next couple verses. And when he had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute. So basically, everybody who is not Ehud, Ehud's on his way out at this point. And then Ehud turns around and he says, hey, I have a secret message for you, king. So this king says, oh, don't tell anybody if it's a secret. Let's go talk in my private chambers. Let's go talk over here. So basically now everybody has been dismissed except for Ehud, who was the leader of bringing this tribute. So he finds himself alone with a fat guy in his own room. You right? The Bible says it. I don't know. Right? And then it says, so Ehud came to him. Now he was sitting upstairs in his cool private chamber, and Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. So he arose from his seat. So now, boy, now we're really bringing some enthusiasm, right? Now I have a message from God. That's exciting. How many of us love that moment when someone walks up to us and says, I have a message from God for you? Right? It's great. You're, ooh, I'm going to listen. This could be awesome, or could terrify me. We might not ever be friends again. A lot of ways it could go. So then it says, then Ehud reached with his left hand, took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. Even the hilt went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not draw the dagger out of his belly, and his entrails came out. So, yeah. That's the message from God. Right? That's it. It's really one of the greatest descriptions of any event in the Bible. Right? I mean, when you start, because the rest of you guys are just, you're thinking about what that looks like, right? For the fat to close over the hilt and pull your hand up. Ehud was probably just barely got his hand out, right? You know? So you know, that's the message from God. So the Bible says that he basically, you know, thrust the dagger through. It says that Ehud went out through the porch and shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. So Ehud purposed to kill Eglon. That was his objective, his goal, his moment was to kill Eglon. Now, this is a singular moment. We're going to talk about the bigger picture as we go along here. But anyway, he was ready then when the moment came. He was ready to do what had to be done when the opportunity presented itself. And when did the opportunity present itself? The moment the Israelites said what? We want you to take tribute. We want you to be the guy who goes to Eglon and brings the tribute, who goes and pays the tax that he's due from our people because he's conquered us. We want you to be that person. Now Eglon had prepared himself. He had been purposed to do this because his heart was burdened for Israel. That's the only way that this would have developed for him, was that he had basically a pre-established desire. He had something in him that said, when the moment comes, I'm going to do something. When the moment comes, I'm going to make a difference. When the moment comes, I'll do whatever it takes to basically deliver God's people. He was designed that way. And a lot of you in this room are designed that way. Where you think in your head, your heart burns, it's like, if I ever get the chance, I will do whatever it takes. You know, if my friend who's not a Christian gives me an opportunity to share, I will do whatever it takes. You know, a lot of us have that idea, but we don't have that plan to basically go make it happen. We haven't maybe gotten that far in how we have developed, but we are ready. So in this case, Ehud was ready. Now we have a series of things that take place here that we're not going to read. It's just a couple of verses, but basically what's happened is the servants wait a little while. It gets a little awkward. King is in the bathroom. You know, we're going to wait. Bible says it gets a little awkward, right? They wait long enough. Maybe we should knock on the door. Right? He doesn't answer the door. Maybe we should go inside. Just get a little awkward because he's fat. And, you know, so they open the door, basically, come in, find what? King is not doing well. Right? He's got a giant sword somewhere. At this point, they're not really sure that they propaganda. So basically they come in. It says now he had escaped while they delayed. So you had all that going on. So while they're like, should we go in? Should we? Not really sure. So at this point, Ehud is running, and he passed beyond the stone images and escaped to Sarah. And it happened when he had arrived that he blew the trumpet in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains, and he led them. Now we have a little bit of a transition. And then he said to them, follow me, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him, seized the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. And at that time they killed about 10,000 men of Moab, all stout men of valor. Not a man escaped. Okay? So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. Now, here we're talking about purposing, right? Ehud's purpose had to be more than just an assassin. He had greater purpose than just to kill the king. He had greater importance on his burdening his heart than just killing this king. My guess is this king probably had some military skill or whatnot, but I'm guessing if he was that fat, he probably wasn't a very good fighter anymore. So killing him wouldn't necessarily change the battle. It would just cause chaos in the enemy's camp when the battle started. So Ehud had basically purpose to be more than just some assassin. He had purpose to win the battle, to lead Israel. He had greater purpose, greater objective, greater intentions. His intentions weren't just to kill one. His intentions were to free Israel from the bonds of Moab. So he went from being a lefty, which is great, to being a leader in just a matter of moments, is the way it kind of reads. So you have this tremendous thing going on. The king is basically killed, and he allowed him time to escape. And then the Bible says that he goes up into the hills. Now, we don't know how long from the time he killed the king to the time he went to the hills to organize the military. It was probably not right away, but he was able to escape because of that. So we have a deal where he says, then what does he say? He says, follow me. Now, when you're in battle and you yell out, follow me, you're not leading from the back. If you're standing in the back of the army and you say, follow me, there's going to be some confusion. Because they're all going to turn around. Don't wait. No, because that's do what I'm telling you. Follow me means you're going to lead the battle. So you have a guy who had the bravery to create a dagger, to allow the plan to develop, to put it on his right hip. A lot of things can go wrong just because they don't check the right hip, because the typical battle place is the left. Doesn't mean that somebody can't accidentally figure out that you've got a dagger. It doesn't mean you can't get caught. Ehud didn't go into this going, no problem, they're too dumb to check over here. But that's kind of what we think. We think that somehow the passage that he was given into the king's presence was somehow a freebie. It wasn't. I guarantee there was some pressure. I might get caught, but I got to take my chance. And in his mind, he had the idea of, if I can kill this guy, then I'm going to cause all kinds of confusion in Moab. They're not going to know what to do, because who's in charge? When the king dies, who's in charge? The vice king? King of representatives? Right? It's a good question. If the king dies, you got all kinds of chaos. Because what happens when kings die? Everybody now wants to be the king. So you got all kinds of rigmarole going on, and hubbub and brouhahas. Wow. And some other sweet old language use that I'll come up with later. But you had all these things going on, so you have all this chaos. And it's a perfect time to attack, because how is the military going to counter if they don't have a leader? But Ehud also knows that the only way the military of Israel is going to win is if someone leads them. So he goes from this intense, scary, cool, assassin type thing, where he's able to kind of sneak in and do his thing and deceive the king and stab him on the toilet and get out and all this stuff, which is pretty awesome. But then he finds himself out there going, okay, now somebody has to organize, somebody has to bring this whole thing together and lead. And somebody has to scream out, follow me. Now, we sit there and say, oh yeah, this. But what does the Bible make a big point about the fact that they were not just some fat king's followers? They were what? Stout men of valor. The Moabites weren't some ragtag group of bad fighters. Ehud took on stout men of valor. That's not a title you give to just anyone. You don't give that title away. You earn that title. So Ehud not only was willing to sneak his way in and get that done, but he was also willing then to lead the battle against stout men of valor. And the only reason you're able to do that is because his design was to be a deliverer, to be a redeemer. He wanted to see Israel freed. And he was willing to do whatever it took, no matter what the plan was, no matter what the idea was, no matter what opportunities presented itself. His goal was to see Israel delivered. His goal was to see Israel out from underneath the bondage of Moab. That was his purpose. His purpose was not found necessarily in what he was able to do. I personally have been guilty of proclaiming, Ehud's leftiness and in a righty world as being really the most amazing part of the story, but it's not. Israel wasn't great for being a lefty or killing a fat king. He was great for defeating stout men of valor. That's amazing. And he told the children of Israel, follow me. So he ran headfirst into the fight. He ran headfirst into the fray because he wanted more than anything. He was designed to be a deliverer for the people of Israel, for the children of Israel. The truth is that was his passion, that was his goal. And we're going to make a point at the end here in just a second to kind of bring that whole part together. But he had purpose of victory and redemption. That was his objective. That was his goal. Clearly defined. How he did it, we see how he did it, but it didn't start with how. It started with what he purposed to see take place. He developed the how as opportunities presented themselves. But he didn't start with the how. He didn't start with the, I'm left-handed and I have this dagger. I wonder what I could do. He didn't start by looking at his talents and going, how could I design a plan to use my talents? No, he started with what? A burden to see Israel delivered. That's where it started. That's where the passion started. That's where the development of this idea, the right hip idea, the leadership idea came from. Because if it just came from, how can I use this cool leftiness? The truth is, that leftiness wasn't going to do him any good against stout men of valor. It wasn't going to do him any good at all. The only thing that was going to help him push through that, the only thing that's going to make you drive out in front in a battle like that is bravery. And an understanding of what matters to me is that we win this fight more than anything. That's the only thing that makes you run out in front. Ehud would not be swayed from his purpose, no matter how scary it got. Everyone in here is a lefty and capable of a great moment. Now, your leftiness may not be the fact that you're actually a lefty. But everyone in here is capable of a great moment. How many of you guys disagree with that? Everyone in here is capable of a great moment, right? Everybody is capable of doing something great. The problem is, I think we focus too much on the moment. We focus too much on, I need a great moment. I'm waiting for that great moment. Instead of realizing that maybe the way we're designed is meant to bring out a great life. A life of purpose, a life of direction, a life that makes a difference in people's lives around us. And everyone in here is capable of being heavenly purposed. Everybody in here is capable of carrying out, a life of value because of heavenly purpose, heavenly objectives, heavenly goals. Not everybody will. I mean, it's sad, but not everybody will. But everybody's capable of doing it. So when we look at this, we say, do you have heavenly objectives? It's a great question. Do you have heavenly objectives? If you ask yourself, what are my heavenly objectives? Your list would be, I'm not asking you to yell it out loud. I'm just saying, think to it yourself. Do you have divine goals? What is your goal in growth? What is your goal in impact? What is your goal in value? What is your goal in making a difference? Do you even have one? Are you just hoping that one day your goal ends up on your porch? Oh, sweet, a goal. Thank God. I didn't have any of those. Now I have a goal. What's your goal? Just to make it through the day. How many of us have had those days, right? Even before you get out of bed, you're like, oh, let me survive today. That's not a goal. It's just not. It's a hope. But the reality is what are your goals? Do you even have any? When you say my goals for God, my goals in my spiritual life, my goals in my spiritual walk are, or are you on the other fence going, well, I'm just hoping it lands on me, and then God says, here's your moment. Because that's what happened with Ehud, right? There was no planning. no bravery involved, no foresight. Oh, right, no, it was all of that. It was all of that. The great moment didn't happen to Ehud. He went out and he made it happen. He went out and he designed it. Because like I said, don't read into the story what isn't there. We don't see anywhere where it says, and God told Ehud, do it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. No, that's why I said maybe, and for a lot of us it's true, your purpose is found solely in your design, which means your greatness is found in who you are and what you are capable of doing simply by how you are created. Simply by the equation that is who you are. Are you charismatic? Are you somebody who's totally approachable? Are you somebody who loves people? Are you somebody who's sympathetic? Are you somebody who loves to pray? Are you somebody who loves to be generous? Are you somebody who loves to give things away? Now, all of those can have a secular purpose and a heavenly purpose, absolutely. Are you somebody who loves to bring wisdom? Are you somebody who loves to sit and counsel? Are you somebody who loves to teach? Are you somebody who loves to vacuum? The reality is all of these things, we have things that are who we are designed to be. And it's okay if you look at your design to find your purpose. A lot of us, we look to other methodologies. And we get confused when we start embracing them that way. So, the road to purpose isn't about methodologies, it is about commitment and desire. What I mean by that is a lot of times we think that purpose is me plus God, plus the perfect plan, plus the perfect situation, plus the moment being presented to me equals success. And I think we get confused because we try so hard to wrap purpose into methodology. I didn't know what my purpose, I didn't have any purpose until I started going to church and they put me in charge of a small group. And now I'm filled with purpose. No, you're leading a ministry. Your purpose is found in your design and your ability to be a part of that thing and to what passion burns inside of you. There are a lot of things that I'm good at to which I am not purposed. I'll be really honest with you. There are a lot of things I'm good at that I don't even like to do. Not purposed. Purpose is found in that, what is it that passionately burns inside you, that desire that just won't go away, that torch you can't put out, that fire that won't be, that won't allow itself to be doused or burn out in your life. For Ehud, it started with a desire to see Israel delivered. How that worked out was not the concern. He just knew when the time presented itself, he was going to take full advantage of it. So don't be so caught up in, I'm going to go get books on, 19 ways to purpose. So I see, I'm going to use this methodology, I'm going to use that methodology. The truth is, for a lot of us, it's just as simple as understanding our design. Your purpose is not the total of your talents. Your purpose is not the sum total of your talents. We tend to, and our culture does, tend to elevate people with talent. Although we like laughing at people without it too. That's what reality TV's all about. But our culture is about elevating people with talent. We like to think that your purpose has everything to do with your talent. Don't make the mistake of assuming that your talents are necessarily your purpose. What were Ehud's talents? We don't know of any, right? Bravery's not a talent.
Sneaky.
Yeah, definitely stealthy. The reality is, being left-handed, sorry, Tony, is not a talent. Unless you're a pitcher. Then it's a huge advantage. Cheers. But the truth is, being left-handed is not a talent. We don't know if Ehud, maybe he was rocking on the harp. We don't know. Right? Ehud might have been sick. In some really cool harp band back in the day. I don't know. Ehud might have been a comedian. There's a lot of, he might have had some talents, but what ultimately was his purpose is not found in any kind of talent. So a lot of times we have this idea that, well, if I'm a good musician, then my purpose is to be in the worship team. Or if I'm, if I have a good voice, my purpose is to be a backup vocalist in the worship team. And we have these ideas that somehow our talents define our purpose. That's not necessarily true. So don't get caught up in this idea that somehow I don't have as much talent as that guy, so he has greater purpose than I do. That was an easy thing to fall into early on in Bible college, I think, for anybody who has, had ever gone through the Bible college endeavor. When you first get there and you're 17 years old, 18 years old, and you're looking at all these other guys that can sing, dance, have sick hair, know all the words to, all 10 verses of, Come Thou Fount, and, can pray in wicked tongues, and it just sounds awesome, and they can sing in the spirit, and they can dance, and they can do the ribbon without it touching the floor, and they can, you know what I'm saying? It's easy to go, man, that guy, he's amazing. His purpose is way more than mine. I would just be the janitor to his Billy Grahamness, And I think it's easy to fall victim to this idea that talent and purpose are the same thing, and they're not. They're not. We will not find our purpose until we decide to live life on purpose. The truth is, until we actually develop whatever that burden is that keeps us going, that desire to build objectives and goals, that desire to do something begins to burn within us, then we're never going to be able to define or find our purpose. Because we'll sit there and we'll wait for our purpose to fall from the sky. But you know what? If you're somebody who doesn't live on point, if you're somebody who doesn't live looking for the next opportunity, if you're not somebody who lives looking for goals, the truth is your purpose could fall from heaven and you'll drive right over it. Because you're not even looking for a reason to matter. You're not looking for an opportunity to basically exercise purpose. You're not looking for a chance to go out and do something for God. So when that moment comes and you're like, go right around it, I don't know what this thing is in my way. God's like, dude, yeah, never mind. Just keep walking. Because you're sleepwalking through life. And a lot of Christians, it's kind of how we do it. We sit there, we come to church, we get saved, we sign up for the potlucks and the tithing and the singing every week and the fulfilling some sort of volunteer role in the church, and then we just sort of sleepwalk through our spirituality. Where opportunities are falling from the sky, but you know what? We're not getting in there. Oh, because maybe, what if your purpose has nothing to do with your talents? That's not right. I want my purpose to line up with my talents. What if it doesn't? What if that thing that drives you, what if that opportunity that God has designed you for has nothing to do with what you're good at? Well, then that's just scary. Because I've come to rely on my talents to get through life. I've come to rely on my abilities solely through my own talents to define myself. And so we have to be careful to not sleepwalk. To not, it's amazing how many times Christians are befuddled about things. I don't understand why our church doesn't grow. No, I think that's a pretty easy question. Right? There's no new people. And why aren't there any new people? Because nobody invites anybody. Or why is my friend just not coming to Christ? Well, what's your plan? What's your goal? What are your objectives? What are you saying? How tenacious are you? Because, sometimes tenacity is okay. And sometimes you just say, I don't know why I don't grow. When was the last time you really thought about how to grow correctly? When was the last time you really took time in your life to institute the policies of Christ, to study the ways of God, and to go out and exercise them? You have to go out and exercise your faith a little bit sometimes. Why doesn't God give me bigger things to do? When was the last time you were faithful in the little things? When was the last time you were faithful in the little things? I remember when I was in college, I had a friend, because a friend of mine played NFL for a while, and I had a friend who said, if I had tried a little harder. And I just kind of laughed and went, no. Well, why not? Because I've been around that. That's a lifestyle. That's a passion. That's a purpose. That's a burden. That was work. And a whole lot of it. It wasn't about trying a little harder. It was about actually living in the depth of that and believing that that is what you were designed to do. But as Christians, man, we hardly ever feel that way about our faith. Our faith becomes this thing we practice in the spare time. This thing becomes this, I'm going to practice my spirituality. Well, no, it needs to become your lifestyle. It has to become who you are. It has to become what consumes you. I guarantee you, Ehud spent most of his life, up to the point where he, thrust the sword into the jelly rolls. I guarantee he spent most of his life going, if I ever get a chance to kill that king, to turn this around, I'm going to turn this around. I guarantee it. I guarantee he spent every day of his youth going, if I ever get a chance, I'm going to do it. So he prepared and he practiced. And he understood what he needed to do. He built his own dagger, right? It's not something you do by accident. It's something you know how to do. He thrust it into somebody to kill them. Probably wasn't the first time he practiced that. He practiced. He prepared. He had purpose. He understood. And I guarantee he had a plan worked out in his head. So the truth is we have to make sure we live life on purpose. And then we don't find our purpose until we define our heavenly goals and intentions on it. What are your heavenly goals? What are your intentions? What's your plan? What role are you filling? What is your heavenly burden? Who is your heavenly burden? What do you want to see take place? What drives you to be in church? What drives you to read your Bible? What drives you to those things? It can't just be your practice. It has to be your lifestyle. But what drives you to do it? What burns inside you? That's what we're going to talk about when it comes to purpose over the next couple of weeks. But what is it that pushes you? If your answer is, I don't know, that's not healthy. I saw a cartoon when I was studying this week. That's some old guy in bed, he's laying there, looking about 105 years old. And he goes, hey, I just figured out what I'm supposed to do. Don't be that guy. Christianity can be a great adventure. It can be an awesome challenge. It can be an amazing thing if you choose to get into it. But if you want to sit there on the fringe and do what you think is just enough to get into heaven, then it's kind of boring. But if you want to dive in and go for it, head first, be risk takers, be challengers, then you might find yourself sneaking in like Ehud did, to do some sweet covert thing. Most of you probably not going to stab a fat king, but any of you do, sweet. Most of you are not going to probably get that chance, but you know what? You're all going to get your chance to do something crazy over and over again if you choose to live in a life, spiritually where you've thrown yourself into it. So let's close in prayer. And Father, we just pray right now that we be challenged to begin to digest the idea of what our purpose is, what you have designed us to do, that our purpose is in your design of us. And then we need to stop asking for other things to take place, but understand how we're designed and what it is that we're called to do. So God, I just pray that we begin as we sort of open up this conversation for the next couple of weeks, God, that you can allow us to really ask ourselves the hard questions. What am I here for? What's the point? Am I really throwing myself into this? Am I like Ehud? Am I somebody who's waiting for the chance and I know when I get it I'm going to do whatever it takes? Or am I somebody who wouldn't know a chance if it smacked me in the face? So God, I just pray for a real discernment for each of us personally this week. And God, I just pray that you can drive us to conviction. In your name, amen.